Welcome, spicy lady. The biggest changes in life rarely happen all at once. They happen quietly until one day you realize you're no longer the person you used to be. There are some experiences that almost every spicy lady goes through, but they rarely happen overnight. They arrive little by little through disappointment, growth, hard decisions, and moments that force her to see people and life differently. At first, these changes can feel confusing. She may wonder why certain friendships fade, why some people suddenly become uncomfortable around her, or why things that once mattered no longer hold the same value. The truth is that growing into yourself often changes the way you see the world. It also changes the way the world responds to you. The lessons are not always pleasant, but they are honest. Some reveal hidden strengths. Others expose painful realities that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. This video is not about creating a fantasy or placing spicy ladies on a pedestal. It is about the quiet transformations that reshape the way they think, choose, trust, and live. You may recognize yourself in some of these points, or you may finally understand someone you have never fully understood before. Make sure you stay until the very end, because these 10 experiences build on one another. By the final point, you will see how these changes connect and why they happen sooner or later to almost every spicy lady. Now, let's begin. Number 1, she becomes comfortable walking away from almost respected, almost appreciated, almost loved, almost chosen. She realizes that almost can quietly consume years of a person's life. One of the biggest turning points in a spicy lady's life is the day she stops settling for almost. She comes to understand that there is a huge difference between having hope and holding on to something that has already shown its limits. This lesson is rarely learned through one experience. It usually comes after years of giving people extra chances, waiting for things to improve, and believing that if she is patient enough, everything will eventually fall into place. She begins to notice a pattern. Almost respected means her opinions are only valued when they are convenient. Almost appreciated means people notice her efforts only after she stops giving them. Almost loved means someone enjoys having her around, but never truly commits. Almost chosen means she is always the backup plan instead of the first choice. At first, it is easy to make excuses. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they are going through a difficult season. Maybe things will change next month. But months quietly become years, and nothing really changes except the amount of time she has lost. The same thing can happen in friendships and relationships. Some people enjoy the comfort of knowing she will always be there, yet they never invest the same energy in return. They give just enough to keep her waiting, but never enough to make her feel secure. This is when her mindset changes. She stops chasing potential and starts paying attention to reality. She understands that consistency speaks louder than promises, and that real respect never has to be guessed. Walking away is not an act of pride. It is an act of wisdom. She finally realizes that life is too valuable to spend on almost, because almost has a quiet way of stealing years that can never be returned. Number 2, her circle gets smaller without any big fight. She doesn't dramatically cut people off. Life simply exposes who only valued convenience, attention, or emotional access. One of the quietest changes that happens to a spicy lady is that her circle becomes smaller, but not because of arguments, betrayal, or dramatic endings. In many cases, nothing explosive happens at all. Life simply reveals who was truly there for her and who was only there because it was easy, convenient, or beneficial. As she grows, she stops doing all the work to keep certain relationships alive. She no longer feels the need to be the first person to call, the one who always checks in, or the one who keeps making excuses for people who never give the same effort back. What surprises her is what happens next. Some relationships disappear on their own. That realization can be painful at first. She begins to see that some people were connected to her only because she made the connection easy. Once she stopped carrying the entire friendship, there was nothing left to hold it together. She also learns that history does not always equal loyalty. Just because someone has known you for 10 years does not mean they still belong in your life today. Instead of forcing old connections to survive, she allows them to end with peace. She understands that every relationship has a season, and not every season is meant to last forever. The interesting part is that her smaller circle often brings her greater peace. There is less gossip, less confusion, and fewer one-sided relationships. The conversations become more genuine. The trust becomes stronger. The silence becomes more comfortable. She eventually realizes that a shorter contact list is not a sign of loss. It is often proof that she has stopped chasing relationships that had quietly ended long before she was willing to admit it. Sometimes growing up is not about meeting more people. It is about recognizing the few who have been real all along. Number 3. She notices that envy often arrives disguised as concern. Not every warning is protection. Sometimes people discourage her because her growth reminds them of risks they never took. One of the most eye-opening lessons a spicy lady learns is that envy does not always sound negative. In fact, it often sounds kind, caring, and reasonable. Not everyone who tells her to slow down is trying to protect her. Sometimes they are simply uncomfortable watching someone else do what they were too afraid to attempt themselves. First. This is difficult to recognize because the words sound sincere. Someone might say, "I just do not want you to get disappointed," or "Are you sure you're ready for something like that?" But after hearing similar comments again and again, she begins to notice something interesting. These people rarely encourage growth. They are quick to point out the risks, but almost never the possibilities. She also learns that some people feel safer when everyone around them stays the same. Your growth forces them to face questions they have spent years avoiding. Rather than face those uncomfortable thoughts, they try to make your ambition seem unrealistic. This does not mean every warning should be ignored. Wise advice has value. The difference is that genuine advice helps you prepare, while disguised envy quietly convinces you not to try at all. Over time, the spicy lady becomes more careful about whose opinion she carries. She listens to people who want to see her succeed, even if they offer hard truths. She learns that real supporters do not make her feel smaller. They challenge her to become wiser, stronger, and more prepared without asking her to shrink her dreams to match their comfort. Number 4. She realizes some people miss the version of her they could control. Occasionally, someone returns claiming they've changed. Often, what they actually miss is the woman who tolerated behavior she would never accept today. One of the hardest truths a spicy lady eventually discovers is that not everyone who comes back into her life is coming back because they truly value her. Sometimes they're simply looking for the version of her that was easier to influence, easier to disappoint, and easier to take for granted. First, this can be confusing. Someone who ignored her messages for months suddenly reaches out. A former friend starts acting interested again. An old partner claims they have changed and wants another chance. Sounds sincere, and sometimes it may even be genuine. But experience has taught her one important lesson. Words are easy. Consistent actions are much harder. She begins to ask herself a different question. Do they actually miss me? Or do they miss the version of me that accepted things I would never accept today? There is a big difference. The older version of her stayed quiet to avoid conflict. She gave endless second chances. She ignored broken promises because she believed people would eventually change. She excused disrespect because she wanted to see the good in everyone. Now things are different. She listens more carefully. She notices patterns instead of promises. She no longer mistakes apologies for change. She understands that real growth is visible in daily behavior, not emotional speeches. This realization does not make her bitter. It makes her wiser. She understands that forgiveness does not require giving someone unlimited access to her life. People can change, and she believes that is possible. But she also knows that trust is rebuilt through consistent effort, not through memories or good intentions alone. The spicy lady no longer measures relationships by how long they have existed or by how emotional the reunion feels. She measures them by mutual respect, honesty, and effort. That if someone truly misses the woman she has become today, they will respect her boundaries instead of trying to bring back the version of her they could control. Number 5. She stops feeling responsible for everyone's comfort. One of the most freeing moments in a spicy lady's life comes when she realizes that she is not responsible for making everyone else comfortable. For years, she may have carried an invisible burden. She carefully chose her words, held back her opinions, and even questioned her own decisions because she did not want anyone to feel offended, challenged, or left behind. Over time, she begins to ask herself one simple question. Why am I carrying emotions that belong to someone else? she starts noticing something many people never see. The moment a woman speaks honestly, sets a boundary, or shows confidence, there is often pressure to soften it. She is expected to explain herself, apologize, or make other people feel better about choices that have nothing to do with them. This does not mean she becomes cold or insensitive. She still treats people with kindness and respect. The difference is that kindness no longer means sacrificing her honesty or pretending to be smaller than she is. She can care about people without carrying every reaction they have. One of the greatest signs of maturity is knowing where your responsibility ends. She is responsible for her words, her actions, and the way she treats others. She is not responsible for every assumption people make, every insecurity they feel, or every expectation they place on her. That realization gives her something many people spend years searching for: peace. Not because everyone finally agrees with her, but because she no longer believes it is her job to make everyone comfortable at the cost of her own peace of mind. Number 6. She discovers that peace is addictive. Once she experiences a life without unnecessary drama, she becomes surprisingly protective of it. One of the most unexpected things a spicy lady discovers is that peace can become more valuable than excitement. After experiencing enough unnecessary conflict, broken trust, and emotional exhaustion, she finally gets a taste of what real peace feels like. It is waking up without anxiety. It is not checking her phone, wondering who is upset with her today. It is having relationships where honesty replaces mind games and respect replaces confusion. Once she experiences that kind of life, something inside her changes. She becomes very careful about what and who she allows into her world. She starts asking a simple question before making important decisions. Will this bring peace into my life, or will it steal it? That question changes everything. People sometimes mistake her love of peace for being distant or overly cautious. In reality, she is simply protecting something she fought hard to find. She knows what it feels like to live with constant stress, and she has no desire to return to that way of living. In the end, she realizes that peace is not something you stumble upon by accident. It is something you build through wise decisions, healthy boundaries, and the courage to walk away from anything that repeatedly disturbs your mind. Once she discovers that kind of peace, she protects it with everything she is because she knows it is one of the greatest forms of wealth a person can ever possess. Number 7. Her standards quietly rise without her realizing it. One of the quietest changes that happens to a spicy lady is that her standards begin to rise without her even noticing. There is no dramatic moment where she decides to expect more from people. It happens naturally through experience. Every disappointment teaches her something. Every broken promise sharpens her judgment. Every honest relationship shows her what genuine character actually looks like. Years earlier, she may have been impressed by confidence, charm, expensive gifts, social status, or the way someone could say all the right things. But over time, she discovers that first impressions can be carefully managed. Character cannot. She starts paying attention to the small things that most people overlook. Does this person keep their word when nobody is watching? Do they treat people with respect even when there is nothing to gain? Are they reliable during difficult times or only present when life is easy and enjoyable? This is exactly what the spicy lady begins to notice. She becomes less interested in what people promise and more interested in what they repeatedly do. Because of this, her trust becomes harder to earn. Not because she is cold or suspicious, but because she has learned that trust should be built, not handed out freely. Some people mistake her higher standards for being difficult. What they fail to understand is that her standards are not based on perfection. She simply looks for honesty, consistency, accountability, and respect. In the end, her rising standards protect something far more valuable than her reputation. They protect her peace of mind. Number 8. She understands that kindness without boundaries attracts users. One of the most valuable lessons a spicy lady learns is that kindness by itself is not enough to build healthy relationships. Kindness is a beautiful quality, but without boundaries, it can quietly become an invitation for the wrong people to take advantage of her. She eventually realizes that being compassionate is never the problem. The real problem is believing she must always be available, always understanding, and always willing to give more than she receives. This is when her understanding of kindness begins to change. She realizes that healthy generosity includes wisdom. It knows when to give and when to step back. It helps without allowing others to become dependent. It cares without allowing respect to disappear. She also learns that saying no is not an act of selfishness. Sometimes it is the most honest answer she can give. Boundaries do not make kindness smaller. They make it more meaningful. They ensure that her generosity is given from a place of choice instead of pressure, and that it reaches people who value it instead of those who simply consume it. Number 9, she notices that emotional maturity is much rarer than intelligence. One of the most surprising lessons a spicy lady learns is that intelligence and emotional maturity are not the same thing. She meets people with impressive careers, sharp minds, and remarkable achievements who completely fall apart when things do not go their way. On the other hand, she also meets people who may never call themselves geniuses, yet they have something far more valuable. They stay calm under pressure. They listen before reacting. They admit when they make mistakes. They can disagree without becoming disrespectful. This lesson changes the way the spicy lady judges people. She stops being impressed by clever conversations or impressive qualifications alone. Instead, she watches how people behave when life becomes uncomfortable. Knowledge may open doors, but emotional maturity determines what happens after those doors are opened. Number 10. People begin projecting their own stories onto her. One of the most fascinating things a spicy lady eventually notices is that the less she explains herself, the more people create stories about who they think she is. It is almost as if silence makes other people's imagination work over time. Instead of asking questions or getting to know her, many people simply fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. What she discovers is both surprising and deeply revealing. Most assumptions tell you more about the person making them than the person they are talking about. She stops wasting energy trying to control every opinion others have of her. She accepts that no amount of explaining can change a mind that is determined to believe its own version of the story. That wisdom frees her from the exhausting need to explain herself to everyone she meets. If there is one lesson that ties all of these points together, it is this. A spicy lady is not shaped by comfort. She is shaped by experience. Every disappointment teaches her what to stop accepting. Every challenge teaches her what truly matters. Every mistake becomes a lesson instead of a life sentence. The changes we discuss today do not happen because someone wakes up one morning and decides to become different. They happen little by little through real life. These experiences slowly change the way she thinks, chooses, and responds to the world. Growth is often quiet. You rarely notice it while it is happening. Then one day you look back and realize the things that once disturbed you no longer have the same power over your life. That is not becoming cold. It is becoming wiser. If you recognize yourself in these experiences, take it as a sign that you are growing, even if the journey has not been easy. Every lesson has helped shape a stronger, calmer, and more thoughtful version of you. If you enjoyed this video, let us know which point spoke to you the most in the comments. For more thoughtful insights like these, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join us again for the next conversation. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.